it is Selene with Swanky Mountain, and I am here to show you how to frog back your knitting in the case that you need to correct a section. So on the project that I'm going to show you today, I miscounted at some point my number of eyelets, and I did not put in a lifeline, so I needed to frog back a section of my knitting. In order to do this, you will need your project, some scrap yarn, and a darning needle. These can be metal or plastic, does not matter. It just needs to have an eyelet that's big enough to fit your yarn through as we work through the process. So pause the video, grab your supplies, and let's get started. So we have assessed that we need to go ahead and back up our project. Now we're going to gather the necessary supplies. A darning needle, could be metal or plastic, some spare yarn, and my project. Remember, this is how to back up without a second set of needles. The first thing I'm going to do is to thread my darning needle. I'm going to take my yarn, put it carefully through the eye of the darning needle, and pull it through. I'm not going to cut off a specific length because I don't want to cut myself short. I'm just going to leave my spare yarn to the side. Now in this particular instance, I know that I'm going to need to back up below where my error is and these eyelet sections. I am going to choose to back up to the row below my purl row. And just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to take it all the way back to my beginning of the round, even though my needles are on the opposite end. So I'm going to come down my beginning of row and look for this stitch underneath my purl row. Now when I'm looking at my stitches here, each stitch, knit stitch, makes this V shape. I want to pick up the right leg of my V. And then I skip this leg, pick up the right leg. Now here, I might be tempted to grab this leg, but it's not the one closest to my purl row here. So I'm going to look for this leg right there that gets me the closest to my purl row. Now at this point I've picked up 10-ish stitches and my needle is fairly full. So I'm going to pull my yarn through my picked up stitches, circle it back around, and I do have a bit of excess underneath me here. That's fine, that's gonna pull through as I go. So I just grabbed this stitch right here, and now I'm going to move on to the next one. Slowly picking up all those right legs. Pulling it through and circling it back around. Now, as I'm doing this, if I were to run out of yarn, the spare yellow yarn that I'm using here, since I didn't cut any off, I'm just gonna pull some more off the end of my little ball here. And I'll do that by just pulling, and I can re-disperse these stitches gently. Now again, see it's kind of smushed in on itself. So I'm going to pull this section down to stretch out these stitches a little bit so I can see exactly where that right leg is. All right, we're almost there. As you can see, it can sometimes help for it to stretch out the fabric so we can find that right leg. And I push the needle down to grab that side that we're working on pulling up. Okay, so we've made our way around. We're back to where we started. I'm just gonna set my darning needle and yarn to the side, and I'm going to remove my needles from the project. See if I need to raise this up some, if that helps. Set my beginning of round marker to the side. Just keep working it around and off. All right, needles are free. Set these to the side. We'll need them again momentarily. And now we begin the frogging process. Just going to wrap my yarn very gently around my cake as I pull the yarn out. This is easy and I don't know, I think it's a little fun to frog it. It sounds cool. If you listen very carefully, you can hear the yarn pulling away from its friends. I used to honestly hate frogging, and now I feel like frogging just makes me a more humble person, and I learn a lot. Every time I frog, I learn something. I learn more about my knitting, my personal knitting style. I learn more about the yarns that I choose to work with. And it always comes out faster than it goes together. It's like doing a party. Setup takes forever and cleanup takes up a fraction of the time. I do hold my second hand here as I'm pulling just to help with the tension of the yarn and how it feels as we go. And we're almost there. Okay, so we have made it. Now we assess. I'm going to look, just follow the edge of my project, looking at my yellow yarn here for any inconsistencies like this. All right, so we can see here that I missed getting this stitch picked up with the yellow yarn. So to ensure that I don't lose this little baby, I have a couple of options. Option one would be to place a stitch marker there, which is what I'm going to hopefully do if I can. Perfect. A stitch marker that opens is our best option here. There's these ones. There's the ones that open with a lobster clasp. Yeah, anyways, there's options. But I am gonna place this stitch very carefully. Put the stitch marker through, I wanna make sure you can see that, through the whole of the stitch, just like so. And clasp it, so that way this stitch isn't gonna go anywhere. We continue our way around, and ta-da, we are back at the beginning. I'm gonna remove my darning needle, set it to the side, and now I'm going to put these stitches back onto my needles. So following the yellow thread, I'm going to pick up my stitches. It is very important that we make sure that I am continuing to pick up the right leg of the stitch. Otherwise, when I go to knit, it will twist my stitches. So I don't want to reach in and grab this opposite end here. That would be incorrect. I want to just follow the yarn. So it almost looks like the stitches are facing to the left. I've got quite a few here, and in order to help keep my sanity with my, oh snap, okay. So I've got quite a few here, but I'm not gonna worry about this yellow yarn. I'm just gonna keep working my way around. Sometimes I would pull the spare yarn out as I went, but this time I will not. Around and around and around. You want to be very careful that you don't stab your waste yarn like so, splitting it. That will make it much harder to remove the yarn later. And we go. And once you get a few stitches lined up, you can almost, for lack of a better word, stab them with the needle to pick up a few at a time. Now there are many instances where you might need to frog back to a certain point in your knitting, and we'll use this technique. So even if this isn't the specific project that you're working on, you can save this video and reference it again. Round and around and around we go. Round and around and around we go. We're almost there though. And we're most definitely close to my little purple marker here, which is the stitch we missed. So we'll want to pay extra careful attention there. And you can see I am maneuvering the fabric to spread out the stitches or bring them closer together along the yellow yarn as need be. All right, here's our little yellow marker. Oh no, okay, so see right here, I missed this stitch. So I'm gonna backtrack, my yellow yarn is still in there. So I can just pick up that guy without losing him. Now, when I get to the purple, I'm going to lift up the stitch, make sure that it's facing the left, put it onto my needle, and remove my marker. Now he's a happy little guy with us again. And as I'm going, I'm spreading out my stitches. I'm making sure that I'm getting everybody picked up. So that way we're not losing anybody. And we're back at the beginning. Ta-da! So now we take our waste yarn and we pull it out. If you split the yarn at any point, it's going to get stuck and it's not going to nicely pull. When you go back through, I would just leave it, and as you knit, when you get to that point, you'll be able to pull it out then. But we didn't split anybody, so it'll pull out. And I am ready to start back on my project.